and welcome to episode 19 of our Little Harbour Homewares shop project. Now in today's episode we're going to be continuing with the furniture pieces for the ground and the first floor. And although I said I wanted to get all of the furniture done before we started on the accessories, I've got a few things in mind that I want to try, so we will be throwing in a few accessory tutorials today as well. Okay, let's get started.
So I'm going to start off just by making a really simple little side table just to finish off the furniture on the top floor. So we've basically got a top and a shelf there, that's those two squares, that's the actual tabletop, and then the four legs. So we're going to begin by doing a cutout in each corner of these two pieces of 3mm or 1/8 of an inch, which is the thickness of the legs. So begin by doing a little pencil mark, 3mm, 1/8 of an inch across each edge of the piece. Oops, down there as well. And then turn the piece and do the little pencil mark the other way. And this time you can actually square that off. Same at the other side, like that, and then we're going to cut out each of those corners. And when you're cutting sections from a piece of wood, you always want to cut against the grain of the wood first. So my grain runs along there like that, so I'm going to cut this way first, and that just prevents the wood from splitting. So just get in there with the tip of your craft knife. Make the cut like that, and then turn and cut that section away. Still a bit joined there, like that. And these little sections, like I say, are for the legs, so you can check that the leg fits nicely in there. But if it was a little bit too tight, you can just cut a little bit more away. So do that with each of the pieces, so like that. Then bring in the legs, and we're going to do a pencil mark 5mm or 13/64 of an inch from the bottom of each leg, and this will be for placement of the little shelf. So just do a little pencil mark on each of the legs, and make the pencil mark each time using the rule rather than the previous leg. That way you'll get a more accurate pencil mark. One there as well. So begin by applying glue into two cutouts on one of your pieces. Okay. And then we're going to stick two of the legs into position so that your little pencil mark is obviously at the bottom. This will be the top piece, and facing inwards so that we can see it when we come to position the shelf. So press that into place. And one there. Just really carefully nudge that along so that it's not sticking to your work surface, and then we're going to leave that to dry off for a moment. So then lay that piece down on your work surface, and we're going to attach the shelf now, so it sits just above those little pencil lines at the bottom of the legs. And when you're attaching the shelf, I just like to make sure that the grain is running in the same direction as the top piece. So apply glue into those little corner sections again. And then sit that into position. So you can just see those pencil lines below it, and then you can sort of press the legs in so that they're actually sitting in the corner cutouts. And that will square it off. Again, I'm just holding that into place, waiting for the glue to take. And I'm going to let that dry off again for a minute, just because this is such a fragile piece, until we attach the top to make it a little bit more sturdy. So now apply glue into each of the little corner cutouts, and we're then just going to lay the leg into place, the remaining legs. And when we put the legs into place and use the little pencil marks for the shelf, again, that will square the piece off, as you'll find that your top piece is going inwards and your shelf is sort of going upwards. So don't worry about that at this stage. So I've got the leg there, so I've got my little pencil mark at the bottom there. So I'm going to lay the top into place so that it's flush with the top piece. And then press the leg in at the bottom again, so the shelf is just above that little pencil line. Make sure you've got that nice flush edge at the top. That's where our tabletop will sit once we've beveled it. And make sure the pencil line is just visible below the shelf, and then you'll know that you've got a nice square piece. Again, bring in the remaining leg and make sure that pencil line is on the inside. Check you've got that flush top, and then you can turn it around and check that pencil line. It actually went together quite nicely. With the fragile piece, just always sort of press together really gently. I've made pieces like this before and pressed, and the whole thing has just sort of flown apart, and that's why it's a good idea as well, just to leave that sort of minute or so drying time between those initial pieces. So you can then stand that up, and again I'm going to let that dry off, and whilst that's drying we can prepare our top piece. And with this we're just going to bevel each edge. So with your sandpaper flat on your work surface, hold it at a 45-degree angle and sweep it towards you. And as we're just using the 1.5 for this top piece, I'm sort of supporting it as low down as I can with my fingers, especially when you're doing the piece that's sort of in the direction of the grain where it's a little bit more fragile. So just work your way around until you've got a nice sharp bevel on each edge. As usual, finish that piece off in your hand with a piece of finer grade sandpaper. We're now ready to attach the top, and we're going to apply glue to the top of the table and then attach it face down like that onto our top piece. So have your top piece so that it's sort of beveled side up on your work surface, and apply glue to your tabletop. Like that. And this will sit centrally on that top piece. So attach it so you've got a nice even border around all edges. So you can just turn that and make sure you've got the same amount overhanging at each edge. You've got a bit of time to shift that around if you need to. Keep looking around, making sure it's staying where it should. I put a bit too much glue on because it's sliding around a bit. I'm quite happy with the position there. So you can hold on to that, squeeze those top pieces together and remove any excess glue. And the reason I wanted to do it like this is so we've got that sort of large area underneath to stand something, so we can have a nice lamp on top, and then we'll perhaps have a little sculpture underneath using one of those wooden embellishments that I've got. And I know I said about getting all of the furniture done first, but I'm really itching to get on with some accessories, so we might sort of mix a few accessories in with this video, or with this episode rather, and maybe then just carry a piece or two of furniture over into the next episode, which I'm sure you won't mind, because the accessories are going to be a lot of fun. So I'm just reaching for my clamps and I'm just going to clamp that together. I'm going to try and get 2 on each side. Like that. Put 2 around there as well. And then I'll put 1 in the middle on those other sides. So that piece can now be left to dry, and that will then be ready for paint. So I've given the table a coat of paint and that's drying now, and again I used the tidal wave as I did for the other side table. So whilst the side table is drying, I want to have a go at making a few little ornaments, and I'm going to be using these little wooden embellishments, and you would have seen these before, and I've used these as well for a couple of projects already. So I've also got here a piece of 2.5mm sheetwood, which we're going to use to make the base, a cocktail stick, which will be the stand, and we'll attach that into the base, and then we'll attach our little embellishments. We're just going to make some simple little ornaments like that. And I always like to drill the hole in the sheetwood first and then cut it to size. I find that if you cut a small plinth and then drill your hole, and we need a 2mm hole to fit the cocktail stick, you'll find that the wood will split. So always drill a hole and then cut the piece to size, and then we can bevel it. So I've already drilled my hole here, and like I say, that's a 2mm hole, and that will nicely fit the cocktail stick. But what we want to do is actually cut the tip from the cocktail stick so that we've just got that nice straight piece to feed through. And we've done this a lot of times now, but it just makes it easier if you roll the cocktail stick along under the blade of your knife. Makes it easier to cut through. Get rid of that bit. And then we want the plinth to be as wide as your embellishments. Let me just measure that across there. So my fish measures 20mm, so we want it to be 20mm, and then not too deep, so we'll probably do it about 6mm deep, or 1/4 of an inch deep. And obviously you want that so that the hole is in the middle. And I just realised now I've done my hole only 9mm in. So let me just see if I've got a smaller embellishment then. We've got a nice shell there. I don't know if that will look right. We've got the wheel. I think the boat was 20 as well. Let's just see what the anchor is. If not, I can drill it again. So we'll start with an anchor then. So the anchor is 17mm. So let's go with that measurement. So that would be 8.5. Just need to trim a tiny bit off there and then go to there. And I'm actually going to cut that with my guillotine. So make sure that's straight in there. And then I'll just use my rule just to trim a little bit off the other end. Put the fish back. I will do a fish one. I really like the little fish. And then we want that to be 6mm in total. So again, do it so that your hole is in the middle there. Like that. So cut that piece to size. Like that. And then I'm just actually going to bevel the edges over in my hand. I'm going to use 180 grade sandpaper just because it's a bit stronger. So just sweep the sandpaper over the edge. You can go along the longer edges. Again, it's just so it doesn't look like it's just stuck into a square of wood. Give that a sand as well. So you can then poke the cocktail stick in. We've got a nice tight fit there. And then we want to work out how high up we want our embellishment. So I'll probably go about there. So that's probably 5mm up from the bottom there, but you can position it however you think it looks nice. And then because there's a little hole in the top of the anchor there, which I'd like to see, I'm going to cut the cocktail stick just below that hole so that it will just stick to the back of that sort of central bit of the anchor. Let me get that into position again like that. And then just make your little pencil mark around the side there. Take that out. Cut to size. Again, just by rolling that along. And then we can glue it together. My battery light is just starting to flash, so I'm going to see if I can get this glue together before it goes. But if I just suddenly disappear, you'll know why. So pop that in there, and I put a bit of glue in, even though it was a nice tight fit. Pop a bit of glue in, it makes it all a little bit more sturdy. And then choose the nicest side of your plinth as the front. And there's not a lot in it, but I'm going to choose that for mine. And then apply glue to your embellishment. Now these are laser cut, and I think this wood with the sort of darkened edges looks quite nice. But I am actually going to paint mine, but if you did want to leave them just as the natural wood, I think that would look quite nice. But just for the purposes of the shop and all of those lovely sort of blues and reds and things, I'm going to paint this one, and I might just do this in the Vancouver as it's sitting on that little blue table. And then we'll do some blue and some green and all those lovely ocean colours. So I'm just pressing those together, press and hold. Battery light still flashing. And there's our first little ornament. And see how simple they are to make, and I think they look really effective. So I'll make a few more of those, and then we'll get some paint on. And then we've got a few little bits to start dotting around. So I've made 5 of these for now, but I'm sure I'll be making more of these as we start stocking the shelves. But I really like those. And this one here, I've actually glued the seahorses together at the tail and then used exactly the same method, but because you've got a shorter sort of stem on there, they are rather top heavy. So they only just sort of stand up alone, but obviously when we put all these into position we'll be using a little bit of tacky wax just to hold them all in place. But I really like that, and I love seahorses, and I thought that would make a really nice one. So I'm now going to add some paint to these. I've applied paint to each of my little embellishments, and I've used a different colour for each one. And when you're applying the paint, you really just want to dry brush it onto the actual embellishment so that you're not sort of hiding any of the detail on there. So whilst they're drying, I actually want to move on to our next furniture project, and that's going to be one of the display shelves for the ground floor. So we're going to begin with what I've called the cupboard unit, and we're going to start as usual by attaching the mouldings to the back and side pieces. So we're going to start by drawing a pencil line across the centre for the placement of the mouldings, and so we don't have to do that 3 times, we're going to join the pieces together. So get them lined up along the top, and then just attach a little bit of masking tape. Make sure you've got that nice straight line along the top there. Oops. Put a bit along those bottom joins as well. So turn it lengthways like that, and we're going to make the pencil mark 72.5mm, and that's 2 13/16 of an inch from what will become the top edge. So 72.5 millimeters, 2 13/16 of an inch. Do your little pencil line at each edge and then turn the piece and join that line up. Like that. You can then remove the masking tape. So I've got my clamps ready here, and we're going to start by attaching a moulding to the top of the first side. So apply glue to the back. Attach that along that top edge. And this is where you can bring in your spare piece of strip and just make sure that both pieces are pressed up against it, and then you know you've got that nice flush edge along the top. Remove the excess glue, and then for this central one we're going to sit it just above the little pencil line. So attach it so you can just see the little line below it. Give it a press, and again remove the excess glue. And then attach the final one. And they're now ready to be secured with your clamps. You can use clothes pegs or clothes pins for this if you don't have enough of the mini clamps. That piece can then be put to one side to dry, and you can do the same thing with the back and the remaining side. Once you've allowed enough time for the sides and the back piece to dry, just sand along each edge of each piece, and that's just to make sure that the mouldings are flush along each edge, so we've got nice straight edges. So with your sandpaper flat on your work surface, just go along in the one direction, so you don't round off the corners. And I've done each of my pieces. Get the dust off there. So apply glue along both sides of your first side piece. Pop that back down on your work surface, and then attach the legs so they're flush along that top edge. So I'm just going to gently push mine into place and then grab my spare piece of strip wood, just so I can make sure I've got that nice flat edge or flush edge along the top there. So press each piece up against it and then push it all together, but also making sure that your pieces are all flat against your work surface and that you're not sort of sloping them in or angling them in. Press those together. Hold on to that and remove any excess glue. Oops. You can then just gently push that piece along your work surface and attach the legs to the remaining side. Okay, so whilst those side pieces are drying, we're going to prepare the front panel. And the idea of this is that it looks like a double cupboard. So we're creating a sort of false cupboard really. And we're going to begin by scoring grooves down the front piece. And that's why in the cutting list I advise to cut it so that your grain is in the direction of the shortest edge. Now we're going to be having mouldings on this to look like the doors, and we want our grooves to be evenly placed between the mouldings. So I've already done mine because I had to work out where they needed to go. So we'll basically have a couple of grooves down the front of each door. So I'm about now to give you lots and lots of measurements. And this is where we're going to be scoring the grooves. So first of all, if you're working in millimetres and you want to do these little pencil marks at the top and bottom edge of the piece. So in millimetres, it's 16.5, 28, 59.5 and 71. So just do the little pencil marks along the top edge at those measurements. And then if you're in inches, it's 5/8 of an inch, 1 1/8, 1 5/16, and 1 13/16. And again, do those at the top and bottom edge of the piece. I'll just pop my pencil away, and then we're going to score the grooves. And we've done this a lot of times now, so I think you know how to do this. I've got my flathead screwdriver, placing the rule just below the pencil marks and starting off just with a faint line, and then go in a little bit deeper. We've only got 4 grooves to score. And when you get to that one, turn it around so that your rule doesn't rock off the bottom of the wood, like that. And then grab a piece of sandpaper, which you can just fold and work between the grooves. Okay, so we're now going to attach the mouldings, and the longer mouldings are the horizontal ones for the top and bottom of the door, and the shorter ones are our vertical mouldings, which will sort of separate the doors. So begin with the top and bottom ones. Like that. So position that first moulding along the top edge, and so that it's lined up along the left-hand edge of the door. Just get my spare piece of strip actually, whilst that's sliding about there, and then you can just press them up against it like that. Make sure you've got a nice straight edge along the top. And we'll do the same along that bottom edge, just checking for the nicest side of the moulding. Just get rid of that excess glue. And then these ones we're going to position so that they're right along the right hand edge. And I've done it like that because I've just left a little hair's width in between the mouldings, just so that it looks like the gap between the doors. Use that to push it there as well. And the same along the bottom. Again, position that so it's along that right hand side. Flush along the bottom edge. And then we can attach the vertical mouldings. Again, checking for the nicest edge there. I should have tried that into place first before I put the glue on, but I'm hoping that it will be right. And that should slot nicely in there, which it did, so that was lucky. And you can see already that first moulding is trying to lift away, and that's why it's so important to clamp pieces together when you're doing things like this. Otherwise you'll always have that sort of gap in. Push that one into place as well. That down. And then we're going to do one that's sort of on that inside edge of that first moulding. So level with that little gap in there. And again, I didn't check it before I put the glue on. I will with the next one. Press that down. So that's our first door. So this one, I'll just make sure that that does fit into there. Yep. That there as well. Again, keeping that little sort of gap down the middle. And the final one. that into place. Make sure you've got a nice flush edge, and this as well has got to fit between our two sort of side pieces. It will just sit back between them. Get rid of that excess glue, and then I'll just grab my clamps. And we can clamp all of that together. I just like to put one across each join like that. Once that's dry, we can attach some little door handles. So once those side pieces have dried, we can start constructing the main unit, and we're going to begin by drawing the lines across for placement of the shelves. So we don't have to do that 3 times. We're going to join the pieces together. So make sure you've got a nice flush line along the top edge there, and then you can just use a little bit of masking tape to secure those together. It's there as well. Piece jumped apart, let me just put that on again, and then just pop a little bit at the bottom as well, just to hold them together. So turn the piece lengthways like that, and we're going to make the pencil marks from this top edge, and the first one is going to be 35.5 millimeters, and you can do that actually onto the side of the leg there. So 35.5 millimeters, 68 millimeters, and 101.5 millimeters. And then in inches, that is 1 3/8, 2 11/16, and 4 inches. Nice easy one there. Turn the piece back the right way and join the lines up. Like that. And then you can remove the masking tape. So as usual, we're going to begin by attaching the back piece to the front edge of the back leg. So apply glue along that long edge of the back. I think my glue's starting to go a little bit off, but I'll see what I can use. Don't like waste. So lay that along the edge of that back leg. Your pencil lines will line up, and you'll also have a nice flush edge along the top there. So just make sure you're along that join, otherwise our top piece and our shelves aren't going to fit. Just sort of roughly press it into place, and then you can manoeuvre it if you need to. Have a look from the side there. You've got that little overhanging lip at the back of the back leg there. So press that into place, and then you can hold it and get rid of any excess glue. Just go around the back as well. Like that. And then with our top and bottom and shelf pieces, we've got 3 which are slightly wider, and that's our top and our first 2 shelves, and then those narrow ones are the bottom shelf and the bottom piece. So we're going to put those 2 to one side for now. That's the narrower pieces, and we'll attach these 3 pieces, and the first piece becomes the top, which will sit on the inside edge of the joined pieces there. Let me just move my camera out a little bit. So apply glue to a short and a long edge. And then sit that piece into place at the top of the side piece first. Go back a little bit there. Make sure you've got that nice flush edge, not even on camera there, along the top like that. Flush edge along the front as well. And then just very gently pull that back piece up to meet it, and that will square the piece off. Press it all the way along. Make sure it's right into that corner. You need to have a nice flush line along the top. Press and hold for a moment. So even though I've been holding that, each time I let go, that back piece, I don't know if you can see the light coming through there, yeah, I think you can, is sort of bowing outwards. So what I'm going to do as I'm working on the rest of the unit is just put a little bit of masking tape to hold that together, and then I don't have to sit there holding onto it until the glue begins to take. So I'm just going to put a bit over the back like that, right in the centre there where it's bowing. Press it and then press that along the top piece there. And that's a good idea when you're working on these larger pieces. If you're finding that you're having to sort of press them together and they're sort of popping apart or slightly bowing, you can just pop a bit of tape on while you're carrying on with your build. I'm not sure why that's happening. That back piece may have just warped a little bit like that, and then we can come in and attach the shelf. And these pieces are going to sit above the pencil lines, also that we're just sort of hiding the pencil lines with the piece. So move that masking tape out of the way. And I think I'm going to have to apply a little bit more glue to my card, so I'll do that as well. So again, get your side positioned first, so that you're sitting just above that pencil line. And then you can pop the back piece in to meet it. Again, I can still feel that sort of trying to bow outwards, even this sort of a little bit further down. So again, get that into position and then press and hold. And I'm actually pushing that back panel in to meet it at the back there. What I really want to do is get this piece built quite quickly, and then I could just put a lot of masking tape on and hold it all together, so that all the pieces that should be touching are actually pressed together. I'll just hold on to that and get rid of the excess glue. The next shelf going into place as well. This is the last of those wider ones. Again, push the back in, making sure you can just see that line. You're just sort of hiding it rather below the back of the shelf. Again, give that a press. So we're now ready to bring in the first of our two narrower pieces, and the first one is again going to sit just above that pencil line. Pop that over there a minute. Again, getting the side bit into position first, and then pulling that back in. Just go down there a little bit. Again, give that a press. And finally the bottom piece, which is the second of those narrower ones. And that will sit right along that bottom edge, so you've got a nice flush bottom edge. Use your finger to make sure. And you can see here as well at the bottom on this back piece how that's bowing outwards. So I'm going to have to do the same thing again, really sort of push those pieces together. And even though we're almost there now, I am going to just put a little bit of masking tape round there, just to really sort of pull them in, because I don't want to risk that gap sort of drying like that, all those pieces drying like that. So let me just cut another piece of masking tape. Again, I just want to put it down the back there and then push the pieces together. Bring it round like that. In fact, I can't have it overlapping there, so let me just Stick that into the middle, and I'll put more on there once I've attached that remaining side. Just pushing it down at the bottom there. I think I've obviously knocked that. I normally find when one piece is out, it sort of puts the whole thing out. So keep checking that everything is staying where it should. And then what we want to do is bring in our false door front, which is dry by now. And this piece will sit along the front edges of those two bottom pieces like that, enclosing that section in. So first of all, apply glue to the edges of those shelf pieces. Like that, and then put a bit of glue along the edge of the false door panel. Put it into place. You can get that bottom bit lined up first. You've got a nice flush edge along the bottom, like that. Press that in, and then you may just need to get your fingers inside to push that shelf piece up, so that you're creating a nice flush edge along there as well. You just need to push it up on the inside a bit more. So push that bottom shelf up so that you've got a nice flush edge along there, and that's then acting as our sort of bottom shelf. I think this wood, I was talking about the tolerances in wood, and I think this 1.5 that I'm using is fairly weak actually, because it's tended to sort of bend as I touch it as well. And sometimes you'll find that sometimes it's harder than, some sheets are harder than others. And I've got quite a soft one here. So we're now ready to attach that remaining side. And we want to make sure we've got nice flush edges along this front here, along our shelves. So just begin by applying the glue to all of those open edges. So bring in the side and get that top piece lined up first. So nice flush edge along the top and the front of the leg. Down on that side a bit. On there. And then you can get it lined up along that front edge so that you've got nice flush lines along the edges of those shelves. And then get that flush line along your bottom edge there as well. You get everything into position. And that's popping up a little bit there as well, so give that a good press. I really like the look of this one, and this is something that you could also use in a modern living room or something like that, just as a bookshelf. In my own doll's house I do actually like having opening doors and drawers, but if you're doing a room box or a shop or something, I think you would have a display unit in a shop that didn't necessarily have opening doors, so sometimes I think it's okay to cheat. Okay, so I'm now going to put my first piece of masking tape right over that side. Middle like that, so I'll pull the bottom bit down first, nice and tightly. And I really want to make sure that that top piece is lined up before I pull the tape down. So I've got that nice little flush edge along there. So, you know, if things are trying to sort of pop out or curve in, or you've got a little bit of warping, you don't have to give up on it. You can just sort of manipulate it into the right place. And masking tape is really good for that. So press that like that. I'm just going around checking that everything is staying where it should. And then I'm going to put a few pieces right across the front as well. Just making sure my shelves have stayed in alignment. Yeah, so lay that down and I'll put some across the front. And again, pull it really nice and tightly to press it all together. Square it all off. Piece across that middle as well. The camera battery has just started flashing, so that's a good point now to leave this to dry. Get a couple of more pieces on. Oops. Okay, nice and tight. I'm going to put a piece right across the front of the doors there as well. Squeeze it all together. Now I'm running out of tape, but I'm just going to get another roll and I'm going to put some across the back as well, just to really hold it together. So just check if you've got any gapping or anything. You probably haven't with yours, so you might not need this much tape. But it really does just square it all off. And that piece can then be left to dry. So whilst that's drying, we can prepare the top piece, and we're going to bevel one long edge and both short edges. Like that. And that was so much easier now I've treated myself to some new sandpaper. So I got a pack of 240 and a pack of 180. Just got those from Homebase, our local DIY store. That green stuff that I was using had gone so flat that I was really having to work hard to get it to bevel. So much easier now with my nice new sandpaper. And then again, I'm going to just tidy that up with a piece of finer grade. And I did say earlier about adding some door handles. We will still do that. We'll wait now until that's dried. And then I'm just going to make a couple of doorknobs using a cocktail stick, which again is something we've done lots of times. Okay, so that's that. So I'll just sand the surface and then pop these to one side. And then I want to have a go at making a couple of little lamps for our lamp tables.